Greeting to everyone listening. We as Radio Club start this podcast known as DAIICT Crossroads, and we are inviting alumni or esteemed alumni and interviewing them so as to bridge the gap that exists in the online mode between the students and the alumni. Now, on the first episode of this podcast, we have Shri Valay Vaidya ji, who is UPSC CSC AIR 116 2020, batch of 2016 DAICT and ex-convener of SBG. First of all, congratulations a lot, Valay bhai.
Thank you.
So, how has life changed after the result? Is there attention? How have been the reactions of people around you, your parents, etc.?
I think the life as such in my day-to-day life has not really changed. It has become more hectic, in fact, in terms of how I interact with people. Like, I have more people to attend to now. Some media coverages, some people to interview with, some people to guide, and so on. However, I think at my personal level, the life that has changed is I have become more relieved about my life. I have become more relaxed. I do not really feel guilty when I watch a movie. Of course, my family, friends, everyone is happy.
Feel a certain comfort and security in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that I have finally, fulfilled the task that I had signed up for in 2016. So I think that sort of a sense of accomplishment has come in. I think so. That is how it has been.
How have your parents reacted?
My parents have been quite happy. They have been throughout the journey. They have been very supportive. They never asked me not to give any attempt or to take up a job or anything. So I come in that way. I have been very privileged, I feel. And after the results, they are, of course, they are proud. They also have their social engagements have also increased afterwards. So I think that is how it has been in a nutshell.
Has the pandemic affected you negatively or positively, and your preparation for the exams, for the interviews?
Fortunately, of course, many people do not have this liberty to say that it has affected them positively, but I think it has affected me very positively. Of course, I have had personal losses also in the family, but in terms of how I have grown as a person, as an administrator, as a civil servant, it has helped me tremendously throughout the pandemic. Since the first wave itself, I was engaged in a COVID duty. So as part of our surveillance program, we had started participatory COVID management system in Panchmahal district, where I was posted. So it had just been, I think, 10-15 days when I had just joined, and I happened to develop a software there to basically strengthen our surveillances. And then subsequently, in the second wave itself, I was given the duty of an administrator of a COVID hospital. So we handled a 350-bedded COVID hospital, which was the main hospital of Panchmahal Godhra. And we had 40 ICU beds. So I had to deal with lots of issues with regards to oxygen supply, with regards to bed management, with regards to patient food and housekeeping, their discharge rates, the medicine. I was also the nodal officer for remdesivir in entire district. So I think I have grown as an individual, as an administrator, and I think, of course, initially it used to happen that I would not be able to focus much time on my preparation, but then I realized that there is some sort of a need to be also some practical orientation to my preparation, right? So, which is something that I realized over the period of my COVID duties, that I can utilize these experiences to tackle many papers. Like, we have public administration paper. So I have administered an institution. So now I can utilize that thing to channelize my knowledge somewhere else. And secondly, if we talk about, say, health sector problems. So I have been an administrator of a hospital, right? District hospital. So I have encountered those issues.
You got experience in it.
Yes, exactly. So rather than just reading about those things in a daily or a newspaper magazine or anything of that sort, I have actually experienced those things. कि यार हमारे पास specialist नहीं है. So वो issues I have faced it. It's not just that I have read about it. So I think I have realized that the practical orientation of my preparation, my overall understanding has improved, significantly. I have also, during the COVID, we also had Taluka Panchayat elections. So I was the returning officer for 16 seats of Taluka Panchayat of Jambugoda. So that also, you learn a lot of things. And of course, Synapse experience and overall DAICT experience has helped me with the event management. So there are also lots of events that are going on in the government, and so we are effectively we are able to manage those events as well. So I think it has been quite positive, the COVID pandemic as such.
Challenges have been thrown and you've grown. So, do you have any hobbies? Like, what do you do in your free time?
So I have over the period of time have developed couple of hobbies. So I like to read books. So since the college days itself, I started reading books just to improve English then on. But then I picked it up. I really started liking it. कि हाँ ये तो सही है, कुछ सीखने को मिल रहा है करके. So then I picked it up and I have been at it since then. So that is something that I do daily. 30-40 minutes every day I read. Other than that, I also like to exercise. I like to indulge in fitness building and so on. So I happen to say go to the gym, run, walk at times, whatever that comes handy. Basically I just need to make sure that I move for 1 hour every day. So in whatever capacity, gym jao, daudo jo bhi karna hai, matlab I used to do that. So I think that has been my hobby.
Keeps you agile. So you said reading, like reading novels and fiction, or
I like to experiment. So like it's not that I only read one genre or say just fiction or non-fiction. I like to experiment since I do not think that I have read enough books, because there are millions of books and
exactly.
I just read probably 70-80 of them. So I think I like to experiment, and so I read both fiction as well as non-fiction, history on India, world, biographies, or even say thriller mysteries, or just fictionalized accounts of various historical events, or say I've read about recently I read about this Genghis Khan, right? So we had this ruler. So Genghis Khan ki I read the biography. I have read in fact even the biography of cancer as a disease of Dr. Siddharth Mukherjee. So I think it was quite interesting. I mean, kind of things that they write, and the things that you get to learn from them.
When breath becomes air, I guess that is the book.
No, that is different. I think this was the emperor of all the maladies. Right. So the air becomes breathe becomes air. That is different. That is basically an autobiography of someone who has been through cancer. This is autobiography of cancer as a disease, when it began. So in ancient, just we see, Kark Rog. Mm-hmm. So Kark Rog is basically cancer. So Kark Rog, we used to have these references even in our ancient scriptures of India. We had such disease mentioned even in Hammurabi codes, and I mean their Middle Eastern civilization ki jo ancient books hai, usme bhi they have mentioned such things like how does it originate, what are the treatments, how
they deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. So how the fight against cancer started in say USA, and then how the lobbying worked and everything. So it is quite a wonderful book to read. I mean,
so can you give some suggestions to the young people at DA-IICT, any genre, but some books that have been very close to you, or you feel that
yes. In fact, some of the books that have been very close to me, one of them being Land of Seven Rivers by Sanjeev Sanyal. So it's a history on India, and the way in which he connects everything from past to present day, and it is brilliant read, and I think everyone should read it just to get an idea of how India has been and how it has been progressing as a civilization. Second book that I often recommend people is Shantaram. So it's a David Gregory Roberts. So that guy had escaped the prison of Australia, and then he moved to India. He lived in Dharavi, and then subsequently he went to various the adventures and so on. So I think it's a wonderful book to get a glimpse into the culture of Dharavi, how an outsider views it, how he adapts it, and how he carries forward with this entire journey. And I think another book that I often recommend people is The Stranger by Albert Camus. So I think it's a existentialist sort of a book, which is also something that I identify myself with. So it's a very interesting book, and everyone who is feeling that they are some sort of an existentialist in some or other way, they should really give it a try. I mean, it's a wonderful book to read.
Okay, so our next question is, why did you choose to do engineering, and why ICT engineering?
I mean, I do not think that I had really thought it through.
Like most of the people
started.
Exactly.
So what happened was, so when I was in 11th and 12th standard, I did not really prepare for any JEE examination or IIT coaching. I did not really take any coaching. So I was in a concept school where basically I was targeting any college which was out of ACPC and good set sort of environment, because I wanted to
interact with new people.
I basically wanted to ensure that I had slightly national exposure, right? Because I had always lived in Gujarat, coming from a Gujarati family, Gujarati medium background and so on. So I wanted to basically jump out of this very shell. So I had two options. I was, I got to know about IITs, Indian Institute of Technologies, in 11th standard. After 6 months into 11th standard, I realized कि IITs क्या है. So then my father explained कि IITs के तेरे को prepare नहीं करने के तू जा कोटा क्या कोटा क्या होता है. So then basically I did not really know about these things, right? So then DA-IICT came handy because see, we had two colleges. We had basically three colleges that we talk about, right? So NIT Surat, DA-IICT and Nirma. Right, PDPU then was very new. It is not very famous college, probably not now. But then, yeah. So then DAICT came handy because one of my senior who was in IIT Bombay, he had a cousin over in DAICT, and he told me that culture-wise, I think DAICT is better than NIT. So I actually got into NIT also, EC. But then I thought कि यार DAICT में बोल रहे culture ज़्यादा अच्छा है, तो let's try this. I mean, right? And I think it has been a correct decision on my part, and I have never regretted even for a single day. So yeah, I think so. It was not really planned कि यार ICT करना है ये करना है. I just wanted to get out of this shell. बाकी engineering इसलिए नहीं करनी थी वो मुझे मालूम था कि जैसे I did not want to pursue civil engineering or mechanical engineering or electrical because I did not really enjoy those subjects. ऐसा लगा कंप्यूटर में कुछ तो कर लेंगे है ना. तो then I think that was the motivation. It was not as if I had some vision कि नहीं ये करेंगे वो करेंगे, but मतलब ये नहीं हो पाएगा तो ये कर लेंगे ऐसा.
Also CS is very accepting, like unlike other.
मतलब I'm very, of course it is very accepting, but then I do not think that I had that vision कि CS में ये कर लेंगे वो कर लेंगे और सब सही होगा ये वो. I do not think I
just went with the flow.
हाँ, I knew that this is not something that I would want to do. So now the options that I am left with, CSE, exactly. So computer science, ICT and so on. And since DA-IICT was offering ICT, so then I think I went with it.
That is the same case with me. Even I got into EC, aspirant, and then I switched on to DA-IICT. So how has your life been at DA-IICT from 2012 to 2016?
Very eventful, very frankly. So when I entered in DA-IICT 2012, I realized that the campus was very beautiful, right? So the first thing that my father told me कि यार campus बहुत अच्छा है, पर 4 साल में निकालना है ना, 6 साल बिता रहे हो यहाँ पे. So that was on my mind. I was pointer wise, I did not really do much well. I mean, my final pointer count was 7.11, but it is not very difficult to score an 8 pointers in DSIT. I feel I did not score it, but then I feel that if I had attempted some more, I had basically put some more efforts into studying, I would have probably gotten it. So that is something that I slightly have, I would not say regret, but then that is something that I could have done very easily, right? So some sort of कि यार ये हो सकता था ये हो सकता था ना. But then other than that, I think it has been a wonderful journey. DAICT, it explored some of the best possibilities, some of the best opportunities for me, and basically made me who I am today. I feel that DAICT as an institution has played a tremendously huge role in my upbringing and in my personality development. And see, I was actively involved in Synapse since first year. I was actively involved in IEEE Valay events. I was actively involved in Conkers, the sports fest, right? Many of you may not have heard of it because of the pandemic, right? Especially you, Viral and Ishan, since you have not seen it, but it's wonderful, right? Then on, I started contributing to Synapse in terms of first of all coordinator and then the committee member, and then I went on to become the convener of student body government. It has been a wonderful journey. I also did many internships. I did one research internships under one of the professors. I also did rural internship at Dehradun, and I think it has only widened my horizons. And मतलब DAICT के लिए क्या बोले यार, मतलब वो wholesome package है, मतलब it basically builds you in every possible way. It also, say मैंने तब कभी coding नहीं की होगी ढंग से, but my first ever posting I got a software developed, which basically we were able to identify 1000 cases, and I think that is something that relates with my time at DAICT. DAICT maybe we used to innovate a lot many things. I would be able to code, but then I never wanted to code. Yeah, I would rather apply these things because I have 5 coders. They will be able to code these things. They are experts at it. But what I am expert in is the vision
thinking
that I can
exactly management.
ये कुछ कर लेते हैं. So I think that way DAICT has always been helpful. The community, the professors, registrar sir, He has been one of the best mentors that I have had in my life, Suman sir. So yeah, I mean, it has been wonderful journey.
So next question is, आप उत्तराखंड गए थे, वहाँ पे आपने एक NGO के साथ काम किया, वो उस एक्सपीरियंस को आपने कैसे ढाला कि सिविल सर्विसेज के?
So I went to Uttarakhand in 2013 December, right? So that was basically after the Kedarnath floods, and I was working in the in this NGO called People's Science Institute, headed by Ravi Chopra. Ravi Chopra is an environmentalist, right? So he's a very famous Ravi Chopra committee bhi thi, basically to analyze the impact of dams on such floods and everything. So he was actively involved, and we also did a little bit of rehabilitation work, analyzed some data, went to the ground, actually saw the kind of issues that they were facing. So I realized one thing over there, that the kind of presence of government which is necessary in such areas, in such situations, कि जब disaster कुछ आता है तब the most important thing is people need to be reassured so that panic is not created, right? कि उनको shelter मिल जाए, लोग दिखते रहे कि हाँ लोग आ रहे हैं, पानी देने भी लोग आ रहे हैं रोज. So I realized कि यार ऐसा कुछ करना चाहिए जहाँ पे मतलब we are able to create some impact. So of course that was not the turning point in my life कि नहीं अब मेरे को civil services करना है, नहीं, that was not, but that was one step closer. I mean that basically brought me one step closer to thinking about this कि यार ये सही लग रहा है, government job, मतलब हाँ, this is something that I would want to do. I would want to spend say 10 hours of my day in such a situation. So COVID was a disaster. So lot many lessons that I saw कि सर जैसे हमारी teams मार्केट में घूमती रहनी चाहिए टेस्टिंग के लिए, वैक्सीनेशन के लिए, जो भी है लोगों को लगना चाहिए कि लोग कर रहे हैं. सी जस्टिस शुड नॉट जस्ट बी डन, इट शुड सीम टू हैव बीन डन. इट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. तुम काम कर रहे हो, ठीक है कर रहे हो, दिखना भी चाहिए तुम काम कर रहे हो, उससे रीअश्योरेंस रहता है ना. सो आई अंडरस्टूड कि हाँ ये कुछ है. सो आई थिंक दैट हेल्प्ड मी अ लॉट इन सिविल सर्विस, वो एक्सपीरियंस.
And being an SBG convener,
SBG convenor was more relevant to my present job profile, because I mean there I was actually directly dealing with people, solving their problems, जो भी उनको issues आ रहे हैं, political उनको infrastructure problems आ रहे हैं, जो भी academic problems आ रहे हैं, issues अपने event management करते हैं. So and also the overall financial management that comes with it, right? In lesser budget you need to conduct lot many events. So we did lot of cutting of budget and basically fiscal management during my time, and we were also the synapse. I do not know afterwards, but then until then we were the synapse which left with the highest corpus of funds, surplus corpus, कि भाई अब हम हमारे juniors को इतने रुपए हम दे के जा रहे हैं. So I think that was very helpful, and that was SBG convener वाला was the turning point where I decided कि this is something that I would want to do and I would want to work for the people. So then I decided to pursue the civil services.
Okay, so at what point of time did you start your preparation, and did you sit for placements in your 3rd, 4th year, or were you very clear about civil service?
No, I was clear that I did not want to sit for any placements. So I realized that this is not the kind of job that I would want to put 8 hours of my day in. So I did not sit for any placements. I started preparing for this examination very dedicatedly after graduating. After graduating in the sense after my final BTech project ka presentation. Before that I was reading newspapers, normal basic reading of newspapers, but not very regularly. I feel कि मैं हफ्ते में 2-3 दिन पढ़ता हूँगा, 3-4 दिन पढ़ता हूँगा इनफैक्ट, बाकी सब ऐसे गूगल न्यूज़ पे और ऐसे सब. बट एक्चुअली जो मतलब पढ़ना चाहिए end to end cover to cover type का, that I started after my BTech project presentation, and then on I have been preparing for this.
Okay. And you mentioned that you went for coaching for a year or so, and then you thought that आप independently अब अपना रास्ता आपने देख लिया है, अभी आपको उस पर आप independently जा सकते हो. तो कब आपको ये फील हुआ कि अच्छा अब ठीक है, अभी मैं खुद कर सकता हूँ?
So जैसे when I went to coaching, so I got a good direction as to where I should prepare in, how do I analyze an issue, how do I look at the world, right? Like sort of a perspective was built. So after say 8-10 months of my stay in Delhi, I realized that I would be able to chart this, because I had very, very diligently read all the newspapers. I had never missed a single class. I had read all sorts of NCRTs and the basic books, and the optional subject I had revised before the prelims itself. And so I was very confident कि यार अब मेरे से हो जाएगा, मतलब ये exam तो निकलेगा, कभी ना कभी तो निकलेगा ये exam, and I would be able to, because I was comfortable with the subjects. So then मतलब it was basically the work that I had done in those 10 months, I think that was when I realized कि हाँ अब मैं कर लूँगा.
अब आप कर लोगे. सही है. अच्छा, अब आप UPS, आप GPSC तो बन गए थे, आप PCS officer, you were already a PCS officer, and you had to prepare for your UPSC interviews and mains and everything with that. So what kind of work-life balance did you see at that point of time?
So what happened was कि what I used to do is my going in the office time was fixed. And I would reach at office at 10 a.m. 10:30 in the morning. But returning time was not fixed. Mainly due to COVID and the other social events and everything that keep on going, as well as the subsequent elections that happened. So I was very sure that the maximum amount of time that I need to conjure up is before 10:30. So what I would do is I would try to ensure that I wake up at 6 a.m. and then I would try to basically find 3.5 hours before going to the office. During the office, what I used to do is I used to take up, say, answer writing practices or problem solving. मतलब जैसे prelims के लिए I would solve papers sitting in the office. 10 क्वेश्चन को 10 मिनट मिली तो 15-20 क्वेश्चन कर लिए उस टाइप का. तो उससे क्या होता था कि I would be able to find, say, 1.5 hours even in my office time. And then after coming to the office, from the office, I would after dinner I would take out 2.5 hours again. So I would take out nearly 6 hours a day to ensure that since my basics were already cleared, I had already appeared for the interview before also in the UPSC as well as I cleared GPSC. So my basics were clear. I just had to brush up and basically to bridge my mistakes that I had committed in previous attempts. So I was very clear that these are some of the things which I had to do. So very target based efforts that I put in, and that is how I think I managed my time.
Any fundamental difference that you observed between your GPSC interview and your UPSC interview?
Fundamental difference, I personally feel that the interview, that is, the kind of questions that are asked are quite similar, right? It is not very fundamentally different. But what I have seen is that in GPSC interview, they ask more post-related and work-related questions. As in, that if you are made the SDM, what are your plans? But then, interestingly, this time around, since I was already the SDM, I was asked that question as part of my job profile. Like, what all have you done? What do you want to do? And so on. I was asked about international relations both in my UPSC as well as GPS interview. I was asked about issues with regards to research and development, since I come from a we come from DA-IICT. So it is a very famous institution. So they asked me about all those things. So that was there in UPSC as well as GPSC. And I think that is there. Fundamental difference is that the number of board members are less in GPSC. The duration for which the interview lasts is quite small. There it is 20-25 minutes. UPSC it is more than 30 minutes. This time around my interview lasted for 40 minutes. So it is slightly more comprehensive in terms of dimensions that are asked. But I do not think there is absolutely difference. There is a connect. Since the syllabus remains the same, and the kind of candidates that they are appearing, as well as those who are clearing, and the ones they are looking for are similar. So I think I do not see any major fundamental difference as such.
Coming on to your optional subjects during your UPSC, political science and international relations. So what made you choose these?
So basically, the reason why I opted for this was when I was choosing for optionals in 2016, I had come across this one video on YouTube. So I was just looking for trial lectures. कोई बता दे क्या है, पढ़ने का तो घंटा लाता है, कौन syllabus खोल के पढ़े. Well, then I was like that. So then I looked up some lectures, and in one of the lectures he was explaining the string of pearls theory, like the Chinese influence, the kind of naval influence and the naval presence that China is planning and has been doing in the Indian Ocean and the larger Indo-Pacific. So I saw that lecture for I think 30-40 minutes, and I realized that this is something that I would be very glad to study on daily basis, because this is very fascinating. So I did not really consider any other aspect of the syllabus this would have more overlapping, this would benefit me in ethics, in essay and so on. It eventually did help me a lot in other subjects as well, apart from the fact that I had keen interest in it. But my consideration was that this would be fun to read. So that's why I took it.
you expressed your interest about going into the foreign services and not the administrative services. Any reason?
Actually, I do not have anything against the administrative services. I just have something more for the foreign services. So, from what I have seen is that I have always wanted to represent India. So, during childhood, I represented. I was basically a national level skater. So, but then I could not move forward. I wanted to play cricket for our state, for BC and so on, but I could not move forward, right? I wanted to do a lot many things for our country, but I just could not. And then this service comes along, and I know that I would be able to represent my country at
Exactly.
the national
face
level, at the international level. So I think I would not want to miss that opportunity. So that's why that was one of the reasons. Second was just the keen interest in international relations, and thirdly, I think it was the kind of exposure, the international and global exposure that the job provides, the Indian Foreign Service. So I think all these three factors were in addition to the kind of pros that the other services had. So it was not anything against the other services, but just something more for this service. I think that is why I opted for this.
Okay. And I'd like to ask, what exactly are your goals? What are you looking forward to achieve through an IFS officer, an IPS officer?
So see, I am looking at the current state of affairs. I think I might get into IFS or I might get into the Indian Police Service. So I think the first thing that I would want to do in any service that I go is to make sure that I become more approachable to people, so that they can easily come to me with their problems and I am able to solve those things. Secondly, I would want to make sure that I take more and more initiatives which are people friendly, which bring in more transparency, more accountability, more information to the people, so that whenever they apply for some license, anything for that matter, for visa, now if someone applies for a passport, you get day-to-day updates. You order something from Amazon, you get minute-to-minute updates, right? But that is not something that is very visible or seen in the government. Of course, we are moving towards that direction, but then I would want to be a part of that process, that we become more and more people-centric, more and more responsive, more and more, fast and rapid in our approach. So that would be my sort of, outlook and goal, whatever that I would want to achieve. And then say if I get into the specific service wise, if I talk about, if I get into the foreign service, I would want to indulge in more public diplomacy, where our country's point of views, our India way, and overall what our country stands for in general as well as on particular issues. I would want to make sure that I directly communicate with the people of the other countries as well as the administrators of other countries. So at times we have misconceptions, at times the counter narratives are more stronger. So I would want to ensure that our perspective is presented in a better manner. If I happen to go into the police service, then I would want to ensure that women's safety, which is considered to be the primary, aim of any society, I think I would want to work in that direction. Cyber security, which is supposed to be the emerging field, as we have seen with more and more people getting connected to the internet. I think I would want to make sure that I attain some sort of a specialization in one of these fields, so that I am the go-to person whenever such a thing arises or any issue that we encounter. So I think, these are some of the goals, but I'm sure once I enter into any of these services, I would find out more as to what my niche area could be.
Okay. So that's how you decided between IFS, IPS and IAS. How do people in general, officers to be, decide? Do they see it as a hierarchy, like the IAS are the topmost, and do people literally go after perks while deciding?
See, I mean, of course, we cannot say that people do not look at it. All the services that are basically offered by this very examination, the civil service examination, are the top quality things. If we look at the currently NCB probe, so the one heading it is an IRS officer, right? If we look at the National Security Advisor, earlier we have seen IFS officers heading that post. Currently we have an IPS officer heading that post. If we look at the Prime Minister's advisors, right, we have more and more IS officers over there, right? We have more and more Indian Economic Service officers as well. We have directly coming someone from outside, the lateral entry individual who is equally capable. they are also contributing. So I do not think that there is any sort of a hierarchy that we need to maintain between these services. Yes, people do feel that if you look at the Indian administrative service and the police services, it is more visible. Their power is more visible. Their overall aura is very much visible because the kind of paraphernalia that they enjoy and the kind of perks that they have. So of course people do look at it, and it is only practical to look at it. I mean, I cannot say that it is wrong to look at it because it is just very normal human tendency, right? The kind of social recognition that the service happened to provide. But then those, in my opinion, those should not be the only criteria. We should really look at the way in which 40 years we need to spend in it. We cannot spend it on superficial grounds. Ultimately, we need to enjoy the 10 hours that we give in our
and you have to be meaningful to the service.
Exactly, and we need to ensure that the 10 hours that are going from our day, we enjoy those 10 hours. Just because an IAS is the district collector or an IPS is the police commissioner, but if I am not interested in it, I am just interested in the tax laws, then I should go for probably the Indian Revenue Service. So I think that is how it...
An individual choice.
Yeah, it's an individual choice. Exactly. They need to basically introspect what they want to do, why they want to do it, and I think that way they would be able to choose it better.
Okay, so their leaning has to be their personality, that has to be there. So now, God forbid, if you didn't clear UPSC, you come of age or you exhaust your number of attempts, then you would be a GPSC officer. What was then your plan B? And if you didn't even clear your GPSC, then what was your plan B? How will you achieve your goals in life?
So basically I had... So since these are two questions, like I would try to answer them one by one. So first is if I do not clear UPSC, right? So say had I not cleared UPSC, Civil Services Examination, I had a very strict timeline in my mind. I had a very thought out plan that I would want to go about and pursue public policy courses. After getting considerable experience in this very service of public service and public policy, I would want to ensure that I get into some university like Harvard or say Oxford or any good university, Berkeley, where good public policy programs happen. In fact, even IIM Ahmedabad is starting currently, right? So these institutions I would want to make there, and then I would want to contribute in the overall public policy making infrastructure and
decision making.
So that sort of thing that I had planned. Had I not cleared GPSC as well, then I had other plans. I had, sort of this fear that I would not clear it. So when my results were due, before 10-15 days, I had already started applying for various government consultancies. So like as young professional, as someone who is a consultant to the government, because that is basically where I would be engaged with people's problems. I would get to interact with people, and then I would want to solve some problems with it. So I had actually applied to some of the companies, and one day before my result, I had also gotten selected for the final round, and I was very sure that I would make it because I was confident enough that if once someone starts preparing for this examination,
you know where you stand.
You know where you stand, and you have ample amount of knowledge. You know about every topic, you know about every issue that the country is facing. I mean, if you have of course studied it diligently, so you know कि यार कुछ नहीं होगा तो कोई बात नहीं, कुछ तो कर ही लोगे तुम. मतलब एग्जाम नहीं निकली तो कोई बात नहीं, लाइफ में ऐसा कुछ नहीं होगा कि मतलब
कहीं भी कुछ भी नहीं होगा.
मतलब हो जाएगा कुछ ना कुछ तो you would be able to sail through, right? So I had that confidence, and so that was my immediate goal कि I would want to end up with some job which I would also enjoy, something related to my civil services which would help me carry on with my preparation, as well as even if I exhaust my attempts, I would be happy. I mean कि हाँ ठीक है कुछ कर रहे हैं सरकार के लिए, है ना? So I think that is something that I had planned.
And do you think for aspirants, like, should they have a plan B?
See, it all depends on the kind of mental framework that they have, the kind of social and financial security that they enjoy in their family and overall society. And if you are coming from a financially privileged background and a family-wise privileged background where people support you financially as well as otherwise, you can think of a plan B after a couple of attempts. Right? If you give your 2-3 years of your life in this dedicatedly, and if you feel कि नहीं, if close misses हो रहे हैं, and if you are not able to really make it to the list, and if you are become very insecure, even though your family supports you, then I personally believe that you should definitely think of a plan B after a couple of attempts if you are comfortable overall, right? Other than that, and see, I mean, I do not think that plan B actually hampers your prospects. I personally believe that it can only work as a stepping stone. That if you have some sort of a financial, coming from DAIICT background, we know that the kind of packages that are offered are very high. So if you are, the opportunity cost for this examination is very high, right? So if I am not getting placed and my friends are earning say 25 lakhs per year, I would, even though my family supports me, I would be like, yaar, sab kama rahe hain, main nahi kama raha hu, hai na? And then you have come here voluntarily, that too. ऐसा नहीं है प्लेसमेंट नहीं होके आ रहे हैं, फिर तो कोई बात नहीं है, बट प्लेसमेंट हो ही रहे हैं सबके,
अपन छोड़ के आए,
हाँ छोड़ के आए अपन तो फिर देन आई बिलीव कि यार नहीं, थोड़ा फाइनेंशियल सिक्योरिटी इज इम्पोर्टेंट, डिसेंट अमाउंट ऑफ सैलरी, इफ सम मनी फ्लो इज कमिंग इन, आई वुड वांट टू एंश्योर दैट मैं अपने खर्चे निकाल लूँ, थोड़ा बहुत सेविंग्स हो जाए, और आई वुड नॉट बी डिपेंडेंट ऑन माई पेरेंट्स, एंड देन आई वुड बी परसुइंग दिस. सो आई थिंक इट helps you mental stability wise, mental health wise, it helps you
fall back upon होना चाहिए.
मतलब it is a good sense of security, I feel, and वो होना चाहिए, मतलब वो सही रहता है, मतलब मेरी ओपिनियन में. I think yeah, there is nothing wrong.
And there was this recent web series on YouTube called Aspirants. So have you watched it?
Yes, I have.
So how realistic is it, or how?
See, it is quite realistic in the sense that it is very uncertain. Even though you must have put in say 12 hours of your day every day for a year, you have done everything that is required, you have read every book, every subject, you have revised it 5 times, it is very much possible to even fail at prelims. Because it is very unpredictable. It is, when it is almost like a gamble, right? You need to also have the luck for
the
it.
kind of
I
selection
also believe
ratio
that until now my luck was not really with me, but this time around it basically was with me. So I'm very fortunate. So of course it is quite realistic, and as we have also seen in that movie, that lady who got married to that other guy, right? She basically started her own NGO. So she wanted to pursue civil services, public services, right? So she did it any which way. So I think that is very important. That was her plan B, and she pursued it, and she succeeded, right? As we have
that
seen,
was a goal in her life, and anyway, either way she went.
Exactly. So that is very important. Okay, you connect. You basically know why do you want to come in this, how would you want to go about it, and then you would find the ways. If you know why and everything, I mean, you would find the way.
Now we'd like to know about your training at LBSNAA. How it differs for officers of different services.
So what happens is, LBSNAA is a foundation course, right? So whenever an officer clears this civil services examination, all the officers are called to foundation course, for which lasts for 100 days. So this time it is starting from 5th of December to 17th of March, and in these 100 days they basically make you aware about our country, its history, the history of the civil services, the general laws that apply to everyone, the civil services rules, right? The kind of remedy that we have, the overall idea, by basically making you go to the ground, that you have village level attachments where you live in the village for a week, you see the kind of problems that they face, you basically interact with the best collector of the country, best SP of the country, best diplomat of the country, and so on. So they give you lectures, they kind of basically make you aware about the kind of ethical dilemmas, kind of administrative dilemmas that you might come across, and the solutions to them. They also make sure that you remain physically fit. So every day 6 a.m. in the morning you have to fall in line, you have to make sure that you run for this many kilometers, you do this sort of PT exercises, you have to pursue one compulsory hobby over there. So you basically, expand your horizons, you develop one more dimension of your personality. And every weekend or so they also arrange for trekking camps. So one of the trekking camps I think lasts for 4 or 5 days, but then other ones are 1-2 day camps. And that is compulsory for everyone. It's a no leave policy program, so you cannot take a single day leave for 100 days. And I have heard it, it is quite interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. And then the other services, so like after the foundation course gets over, people in different services go to their respective academies. So if someone is in the IAS, so IAS ki academy is LBSNAA itself. So then they get trained there for 6 more months. If someone is into foreign service, So they go to New Delhi's Sushma Swaraj Foreign Service Institute. If someone is an IPS, then they go to, say, the National Police Academy, Hyderabad, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel National Police Academy, right? So then उनके वहाँ पे phase 1 training चालू होती है, and then they are basically trained in their own services, their laws, the kind of work that they do, and then they are made experts of those areas. So that is how it works.
Absolutely. What are the expectations from an IFS officer and an IPS officer? Two different questions.
Okay, so expectation as such, my expectation as society is expectation.
Like what does the government want you to do?
Right. So basically, see, as an IFS officer, what we see, if we talk about IFS officer, there are various roles that an IFS officer has to play. As a representative of a country, as a political officer, as an economic officer, promotion of trade, cultural relations, space relations, right? You have to sit in various negotiations like climate change negotiations or say trade relations, trade negotiations. At the same time, we have also seen that an IFS officer, as we have recently seen Miss Shreya Dubey, she happened to retort, right? She happened to basically provide India's perspective to whatever allegations that were labelled against us. Then there is also this expectation that in come what may, you have to make sure that India's interest and people's interest are paramount. So we have seen in case of Afghan imbroglio, we have seen Afghan crisis mein our diplomats holding talks with even Taliban and with local leaders. I know personally a diplomat who was actively involved in dealing with Pashto speaking Taliban cadres of Taliban to make sure that our people are brought back safely. So there are various kind of expectations, both in terms of desk work, field job, the kind of representations and everything. I mean it's a multi-dimensional job. From an IPS officer, we have seen the kind of role that are being played are of course law and order, crime detection, traffic and everything. Then women safety, we have seen cybercrime related experts, we have seen anti-terrorist squad, we have seen National Security Council, national security related advisory roles are being played. Border issues maybe we have in fact border range IG also, we have IPS officer in Kutch. And then there is coastal security, that is also paramount. And then now IPS officers are also given charge of various civilian organizations, like say they are made executive directors of some say GUVNL, Gujarat Urja Vikas Nigam Limited, or say they are currently the deputy CEO of National Health Authority is an IPS officer. So based on the kind of inclination, the kind of administrative skills, the kind of job profile that, and the kind of niche that you have created for yourself, you would progress accordingly. And I mean basically IPS officer, it's a 24/7 job and you have to be prepared accordingly. So it's a challenging, it's a very challenging job.
Okay. So you already are a deputy collector with the Gujarat Public Service Commission. What was your motivation to still clear UPSC?
So the first motivation was that I had started preparing for UPSC civil services. GPSC was my plan B, right? So I had to keep on pursuing it was a stepping stone. So I had to keep on pursuing the plan A. So that was first. Secondly, see, the Indian administrative services, Indian police services, Indian foreign services, all these are the central services, with the first two being the all India services. They provide much larger national portal to work in, right? You get a very larger perspective, you get extremely high level of exposure, you meet with many people, the kind of responsibility that are given to you are higher than something that a deputy collector would do. Thirdly, what I've seen is that in the state services, their promotional prospects are slightly limited. I mean, of course, I would have been conferred an IAS also in the Gujarat Administrative Service, but say after 15-20 years. But then if I get directly into the regular roles, then my career graph would be much better and faster. So I think those couple of these reasons were there behind pursuing this, and of course I knew that I would be able to do it. So then it kept me going.
The kind of postings, we'll ask about that. First we'll talk about the postings that an IFS officer can get, and the basis of classification is from a layman perspective. Maybe you are posted in neighboring states, like maybe your posting is in Islamabad, Pakistan, or Sri Lanka, or Nepal, or some place. What is the kind of challenges that you might face there, and what, like, you don't have culture shock in Pakistan, you face it in Sri Lanka. What is everything about neighbors?
So what happens is, whenever we talk about, so I believe that there are two questions. Like the first one is, how are they posted, first of all, right? So we may have country specific postings, like the neighborhood postings, or say African posting, or say a European country posting, or a US or Latin American posting. However, we could also have domain specific postings, like trade negotiation ke liye we would have postings at WTO. If we're talking about the cultural relations, we would be posted at, say, UNESCO, right? If we are national security expert, we would be posted in neighborhood as well as in the PMO or National Security Council, and so on. So we have domain specific postings as well. We have country specific postings. If someone is a neighborhood expert, then he would be posted in neighborhood as well as in the Ministry of External Affairs. You also have postings in defense ministry, right? Ministry of Defense, because we are also basically engaging defense wise with various countries. So that way, defense exports, defense imports, and so on, an IFS officer is required over there. So those are the things over there. When it comes to if I come to your second question, like if someone is posted in neighborhood country, cultural issue might be there, right? If we have Roti Beti Sambandh with Nepal, we have cultural relations with in fact we have cultural relations with all of them. The kind of barrier that might come into picture is, first of all, linguistic barrier. Say in case of, since I am a Gujarati, so I would be facing some sort of a linguistic barrier in, say, Sri Lanka, and say Bangladesh and Pakistan, right? So that is there. Then other thing would be family life. Some of the postings in our neighborhood, say Afghanistan or Pakistan, they are a no family posting, right? So you cannot bring your family over there. So you have to keep your family in, say, India, somewhere back in India. So that might be an issue. Thirdly, some sort of security challenges are also there. We have seen in the past that ISI agents basically follow our diplomats in Pakistan. Some of the security
They have been intimidated by.
Yes, there is a possibility that direct confrontation or direct intimidation may not happen. But then you would know that you are being followed.
You have eyes watching.
Yes. And you would very well know that. So that is also some things that you need to be taking care of. Then other than that, what one sees is that China is making tremendous inroads. So their diplomats would have more weight at times than our Indian diplomats. But then that is a challenge, right? We need to counter it. So we basically do it the India way. We are famous for our hospitality, we are famous for our culture, we are famous for our civilization, we are a civilizational state. So there are various challenges, but then there are various opportunities as well in these countries. So I think it varies where you are posted, the kind of barriers that you would have, and the kind of difficulties that you would face. But it's a wonderful service. I mean, we should not be looking more towards the difficulties, we should be looking more towards the opportunities, because the government takes care of it. So I believe that, we are in safe hands.
I like the security that you have, that government will take care of it. What about not so developed countries, like if you get posted somewhere in Africa where a layman haven't even heard of these countries, and if you get posted?
There is a possibility. See, currently we are in a phase where we are expanding our outreach to African countries. We are expanding our diplomatic presence over there by opening more embassies, more high commission, and so on. So there is a possibility that we might be posted somewhere in not so hard about country, slightly backward, even least developed countries. But what happens is, we are mostly always posted in the capital city. So even in the least developed countries, the capital city would be relatively more developed than the rest of the country, right? So there is a possibility that we would the basic amenities are always going to be fulfilled by the government, right? The housing, the vehicle, your transportation and everything, your security, that the government is going to take care of you. Food habits, if someone is a vegetarian, there is a possibility that you might encounter some issues with food. But then you are also allowed to keep one maid from India. You can take one maid from India. You can even at times some people take maids, local maids also, and those are allowed. So that is generally not an issue. It is manageable, right? What generally issue that one faces in such countries is also of distance. How frequently do you get to meet your family? So your immediate family might be with you, your spouse, your children, but your parents may not want to travel there.
Exactly.
Right? Because their social circles would be here in India. So there is a possibility, since if someone is posted in Argentina, it's very far. They would not want to visit every month or every 2 months, right? and family would also not want to visit every 2 months. But then if someone is posted in Dubai, they can visit every month because it's like 2 hours up.
Yeah.
So it's an issue. But then, I mean, see, in a least developed countries, we have more possibility to engage with India, because these developed countries are those countries that you have first of all not heard of. The basic amenities for the people might be lacking, right? So we can impart our India way to them. How we have been able to reach our distant areas, how we have been able to develop our own least developed states, like the Bimaru states, as we talk about. They are not so Bimaru anymore, right? So these expertise, we can become the white knight for those countries. यार हमने ऐसा किया है, तुम भी ऐसा कर सकते हो, है ना? We can export our expertise.
So how much of a say do you have in the administration there? If you see a problem and if you have a solution to it, like if you identify a problem there which you've solved in India, so how can you approach towards this? How can you find a solution?
This is again, I'm also a layman in this, but like slightly lesser layman in this. But then from what I have discussed with my seniors and so on, it is basically that we do not really have a say in their administration, since it is their internal matter. But what we can do is, we can send a formal letter of say cooperation to them, that these are the issues that we were facing, this is the issue that you are facing, and by basically engaging with them through track 2 diplomacy, track 1.5 diplomacy, directly engaging with their bureaucrats, their diplomats, we can convey that we have solved this. Their envoy would also be over here, somewhere in say New Delhi.
They can visit.
So they would also come about and say that we have seen this, that they have solved this issue. So we can directly approach them कि यार आपने देखा होगा हमने भी ऐसा कर रखा है. So then I think that way we would be able to expand our relations, build on it. People to people relations will work and so on. So more tourism you promote, they see कि अच्छा ऐसा चल रहा है, right? So there are certain ways to promote many sort of cooperation. I think that is how it works.
New Delhi, if you are posted in Ministry of External Affairs, how does that work?
So again, Ministry of External Affairs, it is kind of a desk job, but then you have lots of summits to take care of, lots of letters to forward to, lots of communications to be made. So any meeting that we look at, say if the Prime Minister is going to G20 summit currently, right, to Italy, so there must be a lot of background work that must have been gone into it, making sure that what speech is to be given, because every word is calibrated. Right? You cannot just say anything over there. You have to make sure that if you speak space technology over there, you have to know कि इस पे कुछ अब MOU होगा, right? So Ministry of External Affairs में it is more about this background work, the backbone support to these summits, to various relationships, to ensure that our people who are serving over there, they are also taken care of. The kind of issues that they are facing over there, or the kind of opportunities that they were identified over there, they communicate to us, then we provide the policy support to it, right? So it is kind of like a backbone to our front missions. So it's like the back end
to
our website.
We'll move to the IPS services. What kind of classifications does an IPS officer see in terms of what kind of postings he or she can get?
Yes, so in this, as I've already mentioned earlier, that we have lots of domains where we need to work. So initial posting is of ASP, the Assistant Superintendent of Police. After a couple of years, he gets promoted to the SP rank, the Superintendent of Police. So either way, an officer can be allotted a separate district, so where someone becomes the SP of say a district, like Panchmal has an SP, independent posting, right? So then SP Panchmal is responsible for all these activities related to law and order, traffic, security, terrorism, crime detection, for this entire district. So it has nearly 4,000-5,000 policemen under him or her, whoever is the officer. Then the other postings are the commissionerate postings. You can be posted as initially deputy commissioner of police, then joint commissioner of police, or even the commissioner of police later on as you proceed in the career. Then there are postings even in the anti-terrorist squad, crime detection, CBI, CID. There are postings in intelligence bureau, research and analysis wing, RAW as we speak, right? National investigation agencies. We have seen postings even in border security. In the paramilitary forces also we have postings like BSF, CRPF, CAPF, various services. IPS officer serves in various capacities over there. We also have administrative postings, right, in the Ministry of Home Affairs or even the Home Department of one of the states. So depending on that, we also have these postings where the backbone support is provided to this entire police force. We also have Police Housing Board. So Police Housing Board also has its own dedicated police staff. So IPS officer heads it, the Police Housing Board, which looks after the housing of all the police officers and all the police staff, in fact, to the level of constable, right, in all the districts of Gujarat. So that is also manned by the IPS officers. So there are various sort of postings, like national security related postings. So if we see Ajit Doval, Mr. Ajit Doval was an IPS officer, right? So he basically has served even in diplomatic capacity. He was a minister in London, in the Indian High Commission over there. Minister is a post over there. So he had served there also. He had served in Pakistan. He had served in Myanmar, everywhere. So there are various possibilities, for even an IPS officer. And now with the emerging field of, say, space security or say cyber security, women security, and so on. So the kind of new crimes that are coming up,
it opens new opportunities to solve them.
Yeah, I mean, we have new fronts being opened. With the Bitcoin and everything, we would see some cyber frauds,
And especially it's decentralized, like no one
exactly.
has a say.
Central authority. Is
so
not
it is more important to maintain people's security in such
100%.
investments.
Yes. So I mean, it's a very emerging and diverse field altogether.
Do people have apprehensions about being posted in Eastern UP, Bihar, or places like where education level is not that much? People are not as literate, and you have to work under a minister who's...
No, see, it's not that. See, I mean, we have this often misconception that politician is going to come and he is going to tell you this, do that. It doesn't happen like that.
That is a very common thing.
That is a very common,
that Bollywood has presented.
Perception ऐसा रहता है, but ऐसा नहीं होता है. Every service enjoys its own autonomy, its own independence. The ministers, even though he has not formally been educated, he would know the kind of importance,
challenges that you are
respect that an officer commands, and he would also be in his own position. He would be also there in his own limitations to tell you if he wants to tell you or she wants to tell you. So it's not that everything that a policeman or a politician tells you is wrong and is illegal. I have personally seen cases where the kind of recommendations given by ministers were actually very fruitful. You would feel कि इसको मालूम है, इसने देखा है ग्राउंड लेवल पे क्या हो रहा है, इसने कोविड के इश्यूज फेस किए, लोग इसको आगे बता रहे हैं, right? Ultimately, he is the people's representative. People would not approach you; they would approach them because they are voting for them. So, it's not. I mean, we need to be very cautious when we say this. Yes, there is working condition might be tough in Eastern UP, Bihar, or say Red Corridor, like the Naxalite state area. But then it has its own challenges. It has its own infrastructure in place. The kind of policemen that you have provided, the kind of security that you enjoy over there in terms of man and material, right?
Much more experienced.
In a Naxalite area, it is much more robust because they know that there is a possibility of an attack on you. So they would provide you with all sorts of security, Y-level security, Z-level security, and so on. We have seen officers, who would be under threat. They would be provided Z plus security. So government takes cognizance of these facts and then only they create such postings. So of course it is difficult. But then they are also provided, hazard pay. Say, if someone is posted in Siachen, in Indian Army, a soldier is posted over there, he gets hazard pay. Right?
If anything for the posting.
It is very difficult. The temperature over there is minus 40 degree. You can't even take your mask off.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like that.
Okay, and to end this, any advice to civil services aspirants that are?
So what I would want to say is that, this time around I am very glad that we have 3 DA-IICT represents to civil services. One is me again, right? Second is Sanjay Keshwala, who was our MTech student, and third is Ayushi Sutaria, who passed out in 2017. So we are 3 from DAIICT. who are going to LBSNAA this time around and making it to the
Okay,
services, right? And I have seen that we have some colleges like Delhi School of Economics, Delhi College of Engineering. We have seen IIT Delhi, IIT Bombay. We have so much representation from these colleges, and of course, the number of students are also more in those colleges. But then, I believe that we have much more capabilities in our own university because the kind of syllabus that we have. So the humanities courses that are being taught, the kind of field visits that are being planned, the kind of internships that are being offered, I would recommend all our students and the upcoming aspirants or the existing aspirants to ensure that you make the most out of these courses. But do not lose sight of your basic course of ICT. Because ultimately, see, when you are coming in service, you have to create your niche. If you do not have the technical knowledge or its application based knowledge, you would not be able to survive. Then you are just like any other officer. You would want to excel at what you do, right? So our students have been known to excel in various fields. DA-IICTians, we have seen, they have been at all the places, right? So I would suggest that you clear your basics. You study your basic humanities syllabus of our DA-IICT, whatever curriculum that we have, very religiously. It is wonderful. It is not taught anywhere. You would at times identify and see that our professors write those articles which aspirants read. I have read articles by Dr. Vishwajit Pandya in The Hindu. I have Professor Ganesh Devi, who used to teach in our university. My first year I had taken his course. He is linguistic. He is a linguist, language expert. Currently, I think he is with MSU. He writes article in The Hindu. We used to read it. We used to discuss, and I used to tell my friends that
it's his article that I read.
Yeah, I mean, I have studied under him. What are you saying?
Flex.
It's a flex, and it is a wonderful flex to have. The kind of cultural the kind of opportunities that our exposure that our college provides, it's nowhere. And leadership position in terms of say SBG or a cultural committee or a synapse committee or anything, sports committee, academic committee, there is ample amount of autonomy that we have, the ample amount of scopes that we can, the heights that we can reach, and we should surely be able to participate. We should not think about क्या घर जाना है weekend पे, नहीं जाना है घर,
Tap into the
करो, stick to it, stick to your campus. The campus life is going to be something that you are going to remember for the rest of your life. I can still visualize some of the things that have happened. Exactly can reproduce it, a BB. And it's been 5 years, I passed out. Some of those things happened before 5 years, in fact. But then, I mean, it's a wonderful college and wonderful journey. You ensure that whenever you start preparing for this examination, you stick to the process, trust the process. Do not just think कि हाँ 5वीं रैंक लानी है, 10वीं रैंक लानी है, top 100 में आना है, आ जाएगी. You just stick to your basics, clear your basics. Just ensure that the basic things that the exam requires and demands, you fulfill those demands. You will find your name in the list. वो सेकेंडरी है, मैं आ जाएगा, ठीक है, कुछ इतना वो नहीं है. बस तुम्हारी वीकनेस पे काम करो, है ना. You analyze your strengths and weaknesses, SWOT analysis करो, and then you कर लो बस. So yeah, I think that is about it.
So we thank Shri Valay Vaidya ji to be with us and give this entire interview, give us insights into how civil services work. And we thank Shamo Cafe Vadodara to lend us a space in their beautiful cafe. That's it for the first episode. Stay tuned to Radio Club DAICT for the future episodes wherein we bring in more alumni and provide more perspective to our students.